For the kind introduction. My name is Doden. I'm the senior commentator with NHK. We have 300 or so people in the audience. Thank you very much for coming despite your very busy schedule. The Abe government by the year 2020 that Japan should be in the leadership role, or at least 30% of the total in terms of ratio for the governments as well as the private sector companies and organizations. Not only for women to shine in the society, but even for men, we need to allow for more diversity and freedom in the work and in the labor. As panelists, we have indeed foremost authorities in this area, and we hope to have very good discussion with all of them.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Speaking from my position, of course, I'm a politician, so I will be speaking from a politician's viewpoint. Issues that Japan is faced with compared with other countries, there are two challenges which stand out. Declining population, and the second one is aging. This is Ms. Hillary Clinton, now the presidential candidate, and Mr. Abe, not yet the prime minister, had a meeting, and Hillary asked a question to Mr. Abe. The key to Japanese economic revitalization is the advancement of women. She clearly said that. I heard that from Mr. Abe. Then 15% would be the increased national wealth. So I think that was what was told to Prime Minister Abe. I think that was the genesis of to talk about the need for women's advancement. The second administration, women's affairs became. There is a law for the promotion of women's greater advancement, but I want to have the women's advancement in political arena. So we have to create some laws and regulations. The government wants the private sector to do. The government is doing nothing. Well, we should do so that such criticisms would not be cast against us. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. I am with the Cabinet Bureau of Personnel Affairs. I am trying to support women in the civil service. In the national government civil service, there are total number of civil service of 340,000. Women, it's only 90,000, only 27%. The so-called career track staff, there are total of 16,000, of which female is 14%. It has been on the rise. In Japan, the big companies tend to recruit new graduates from universities and train them after they have been recruited on the job training, and the candidates are very low. So we have done a lot, but the biggest barrier is, as Ms. Cutler has suggested already, the long working hours and also work-life balance, very hard to achieve. Now, for the civil servants from April, the flex time system is to be introduced comprehensively. So we will be able to improve in terms of flexibility in work. But long working hours is still persistent. We need to move step by step forward. So there are three things that we need to change. First of all, the organization as a whole, the culture and the structure. And secondly, the managers. The managers are not able to have efficient management of their own work. And thirdly, we need to have women also to change what Ms. Jouzuka has just suggested. Maybe the difference between the U.S. and Japan in terms of work style. What may be the challenges?
Well, I agree with Wendy in many ways. The 5 points that she laid out here today are very similar to the way we focus at Aflac, beginning with our senior level commitment. In fact, our founder here in Japan, it's approximately 50%. But unlike the United States, where there's equal opportunity for women in leadership, when I arrived in Japan a few years ago, we had a very minimal number of women, despite our focus on the subject. We had not put in the practices and the rules, as the point 2 that was made by Wendy, in order for us to actually achieve the targets that we so aspired to have. And so it's been critical for us, and we've now actually moved our number to 20% of our management is actually women today, and we will be achieving the government target by 2020 of 30%. And we're very men better than women. And there are also, as Wendy pointed out, things that we can do that not only benefit the women and the working mothers in our organization, but also benefit the men. We've put together a Work Smart initiative, focus on productivity, and we've actually seen a 15% decline in the number of overtime work hours last year as a result. We're seeing a better work-life balance for our employees, and honestly, we're seeing employee morale move in a positive direction while at the same time achieving our corporate objectives. The critical nature to anything like this, as it was said earlier, making it a win-win, is not only doing what's right, but doing what is economically beneficial. And what we at Aflac have found by focusing on women in business and specifically women in leadership is that we not only do what's right, but we ultimately achieve the opportunity to do what's profitable for Aflac. We've recently won several awards, but I think the biggest award that Aflac...
And with the JWIN, Japan Women's Innovative Network, which was started in 2007. So basically, what we do is, for diversity to be promoted within a company, that we provide support and advice, even given the consent and agreement by the corporate leaders. For women to be active in the society and the workplace, this may be due to the declining population in Japan, but the most important thing is, for the companies to be more innovative, you need to introduce diversity in a natural way. You need to create such a culture within the company, a success. This is not only for women, but for the business as well, for the companies themselves. This is something crucial for their survival vigorously, and been trying to promote women. Even though the numbers have been growing, but the growth rate has actually declined. Why is it that? Those who are highly motivated and who are highly capable women have already been promoted to managers' position. But the problem is the next group of women in the pipeline, they have not been trained enough, assessed by the working hours, and they're not really motivated. Women who are thought to be matters. Now, as other people have said, I think that to remove waste and to free people from time and place, to be more flexible, and when you assess the performance, not to assess by the working hours, but by assess by the content of work. Now, as to the mindset, to provide the environment, conducive environment, the Japanese women become more confident with their own potential and own capability. They would be willing and be highly motivated to be promoted.
Each and every one of the panelists have been rather honest in articulating the challenges that they see in the realities as they commit themselves to work in Japan. Any reactions from you, any lessons or experiences that you might want to share with us?
Yes, there were 2 points that were made that really struck me where I think there's a difference between the U.S. and Japan. And one has to do with the government sector, the public sector, because in the United States, and I don't have the statistics here, but many women go to work for the government precisely because there is more flexibility and that the government puts policies into place which really are doing talking points that aren't 100% right, but maybe just 50%, okay? But I really think the whole issue of technology and ICT in the workplace is really the key. There are a lot of role models in the United States. So women can see other women who have children and yet can assume a job with a lot of responsibilities and do it well. They have people that they can talk to and network with, and mentors and relationships with people in the workplace. And so I think as a result of what I call these support mechanisms, I think the issue of not wanting to be promoted
Yes, very loudly. I just heard you. So, the lack of role model, were you saying yes to that? Or Were you saying that mentoring is very important, that you need to share the experience and also the role models? Were you saying yes to that suggestion? In Japan, for women, when you come to a certain level, they tend to quit. That was same reason is there's no role model at the top. When you work 3 years or 5 years and gain the experience, you are very anxious and uncertain. What would be your position in 5 years' time? There is no bosses. And also networking also matters. You need to share the experience and you need mentor, good mentor. Your bosses tell you that if you come to the higher position, these are the opportunities. These are the things that would open up to you. You need those shower of positive messages to be given to you.
When I tell my junior colleagues, I feel that the junior colleagues are saying that I don't want to work like you. Well, Ms. Jouzuka, you said that whoever suggests should start it and well, I was able to find a lot of role models and I was greatly supported by them. Style is going to be improved. And now young women are saying that they can go home at a regular time. There are women saying like that. Other style, know-how, those things have to be learned from our role models in terms of time of work. I have to tell my junior colleagues that you have to create a new work style in terms of time.
It may be difficult for you to mention, so I would dare to mention it myself. Looking at the Japanese government office, that they do not have flexibilities, too long working hours. The biggest problem is with the diet, the parliament. They are able to have regular working hours for their routine regular work. But with a diet session, there are all sorts of committees. And on the floor, everyone, the bureaucrats must be there to respond to all, but they would still engage and bind the bureaucrats to stay on. Perhaps we need to come up with new rules, because flexibility cannot be given. When the diet in session, they have to stay on because of. So unless you change the Minister of Finance, you're not able to change that. Now, the dilemma models for me were male. So until 40 years old, I tried to live as men, as male. But if Ms. Uchinaga has said diversity is very important, even within the political world. Politics is not just for men. This is also for women, for working mothers, for working fathers as well. So to have a society where all the citizens will be, especially women parliamentarians, were just there for decoration, to make it seem as if it is more democratic. And also, one other important role was like being an ombudsman to the different policies, but I think that we need to be more active.
What are your reactions to some of the points that have been articulated by our panelists, especially with regards to the need to have men on board as well?
Well, I think having men on board is critical. One of the things I found here in Japan as I traveled throughout the country and lived here to meet with our sales offices and different people throughout the country, just getting the women to be willing to push their voice, that's something that's easier to do than most people realize. What's much harder to do is to get the men in society to understand that this is an opportunity. Companies are going to have to make decisions around how to allow people through flexible work schedules and working less hours. And what are those trade-offs? Is it less questions on a Q&A? Is it a shorter time frame? Is it giving people more flexibility for the number of errors or concerns that are there? Those are difficult things within the Japanese society, and those are questions that are going to have to be answered not only at the government level but in the private sector. Change in the productivity expectation at work. Many women will be happy to achieve that same level of productivity and at the same time feel that their employer is giving them something back, giving them the opportunity to achieve both in a professional as well as in a personal way. I think that is something that if mothers, because as a population that continues to shrink, we must duly address not only women working, but also women being mothers in order for this to truly be a success.
work for women and also diversity. This is how to business culture of a company and how to improve on the productivity and so forth. But I believe to try to promote women would be a game changer. Are you suggesting that? Do you think that? So diversity, the very first step is to promote women. That is the very first step for diversity. And not just, this is good, not just for women, but for the Japanese society as a whole. This will be a game changer for Japan. I have met with the Business Federation in Norway, and I've asked women executives how the Norwegian women work at companies. They said that we will leave a company at 4 o'clock in the evening. This is wonderful. This is superb. But in Japan, it is too long working hours persisting. But then she responded, don't get it wrong. The Norwegian women are also working very long work hours, but not staying at the company. It only happens that they would stay at the company only up until 4 o'clock in the evening, but they would continue their work at home. And this is possible. And if you say that it is short hours, that would mean competitive edge would decline. There's a fierce competition going on in the world economy. How can we be able to improve on the efficiency of work is something we need to think about. Job description must be very clear-cut and to ask for responsibility of individuals. You think it is a very wasteful way of work. If we can reduce that, then that would be a big game changer for the Japanese economy.
As a political leader, what are the things that come to your mind? Well, compared with advanced companies, diet is an anachronistic entity in terms of work style. But minority is very important. I think you have to have a willingness that you want to change this status quo. There are some good things, but bedrock tradition. So structural reform has to be suggested to these people. So we are the women parliamentarians. In order to change the political system, quota system will have to be introduced, and electoral system will have to be changed so that we can have a quota system. So shock therapy is needed. So we must create a system for increasing the number of women politicians, and we must have the electoral system which will enable such a great change, drastic.
Regarding women's empowerment or utilizing women's potential into society, I realized that you have incorporated that idea into TPP as well, because you believe that women's empowerment is crucial to unlocking the region's full economic potential. What was the idea behind it and the message you wanted to convey through it?
TPP was the first trade agreement that the United States has entered into where there are specific provisions about including women and ensuring that the women benefit from this agreement. And so in many ways, it was a landmark agreement with respect. And so whether you look at the provisions in the labor chapter, which talk about ending discrimination, whether you look at the provisions about promoting e-commerce, which makes small businesses easy. Trade agreements, they provide opportunities for all members of the society, but I think women can benefit. I think that when women come back from having children to the workforce and they want to be at the job, they tend to be the most productive then. And you know why that is? Because they know they need to leave at a certain hour. And as a result, they work really hard during the hours they are in the workplace. They do not waste time. Is that I think with more flexibility in the workforce, being able to go home and do some of your work, as other speakers have mentioned, but also just changing the culture. There's a lot of hanging around that hours can be reduced, and the same or a better work outcome can result.
The career path for women is discontinued sometimes because of the childbearing and so forth. That's why women become more productive when they come back to their job place after childbirth. So, inclusive all that, how do you juxtapose? Cutler said that the child-rearing women are most productive. That's how I feel about it too. The time is short, but a high quality and very dense work product is achieved. So wasteful work would be eliminated and flexibility should be introduced. Flex time, teleworking should be skillfully utilized. So child-rearing activities or community-based activities, those people with such background would be more capable at the job place, especially men also would have a better opportunity.
For example, for the non-regular workers, especially the female workers, try to create social infrastructure to support those workers who are willing to work. How to support those motivated workers? Nurseries, the daycare centers for children, is too small in number. There is a dire shortage. We are fully aware of that when we need to come up issue of the single mother, those who are not married but still having children, how to support those marginalized people. How to think about education of those people is also important.
We must create role models. Well, earlier on, we should have the role models who would be rather close to us, not too fantastic, too great. So we must create, should be relaxed. We should tell Prime Minister Abe that we want to be the ordinary role models which will make men politicians understand what is. Politicians must be well aware of the reality. Really, I have to, I feel very strongly about that.